Good morning, everyone. I am Maria Antuna, Executive Vice President of the Central Palm Beach County Chamber of Commerce. We would like to welcome all of you to the Palm Beach County Housing Summit hosted today by Housing Leadership Council of Palm Beach County, of which I have the honor of sitting on as a board member, and the Central Palm Beach County Chamber of Commerce. We would like to thank FPL for sponsoring the event today and to all of our community partners for joining us on this very important issue in our community. So thank you to all. At this time, I would like to introduce Pam Roush, Vice President of External Affairs and Economic Development, Florida Power and Light Company, which is our presenting sponsor, who will say a few words. Ms. Pamela Roush is the Vice President of External Affairs and Economic Development for Florida Power and Light, one of the nation's leading electric utilities. Ms. Roush is responsible for local government relations, community engagement, and economic development. She has held this position since January of 2008. Prior to joining FPL in 1999, Ms. Roush served as assistant and then deputy city attorney for the city of West Palm Beach, where she played a significant role in downtown redevelopment activities in the mid-1990s, including the development of City Place. Prior to her role with the city, she was in private practice with Jones, Foster, Johnston, and Stubbs and Gunster in West Palm Beach, with a concentration on local government and real estate law. Ms. Roush is past chair of Leadership Florida, past chair of the Economic Council of Palm Beach County, a member of the Orange Bowl Committee, a member of the American Heart Association's Founders Circle, past chair of the Florida Chamber of Foundation, past chair of Palm Beach County's 2016 Go Red Women Campaign, and past chair of the Palm Beach Zoo. Ms. Roush graduated from Florida State University College of Law with honors and earned her undergraduate degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where she was a varsity athlete and captain of the women's tennis team. Welcome, Ms. Roush.
Thank you so much, Maria, and good morning, everybody. It is great to be here on behalf of all of my colleagues at FPL, and anxious to share with you some of the exciting things that we have in store. Again, thank you to the whole chamber for all the work that you're doing in the community and working through this pandemic. So glad for all the work you're doing in keeping the business community together. I wanted to just talk for a few minutes about what we at FPL have to look forward to. We think we have an optimistic future as we all navigate the challenges of 2020 and going into 2021 together. I wanted to give you a little background about FPL and who we are. Our parent company is NextEra Energy, headquartered right up the road in northern Palm Beach County. It's a Fortune 200 company, known as the largest generator of renewable energy from the wind and the sun. FPL, as you know, serves over 5.5 million customers here in Florida, which is about 11 million people, and is the largest utility in Florida. And our sister company, NextEra Energy Resources, which produces wholesale electricity outside of Florida, works in 48 states. We're also known for our innovation, our people management, and our social responsibility. If we go on to the next page, one of the things that all of us at FPL are committed to, and I'll wait for the next page, there we go. Each and every one of us at FPL is committed to delivering America's best energy value to our customers. And what we mean by that is delivering electricity that is among the most reliable, among the cleanest, and at the same time among the most affordable. And FPL has really been able to prove that you can have all three of those things. You can have your cake and eat it too, with no trade-offs. But the way we've done that is through very disciplined, long-term investment and planning in our infrastructure so that we're able to deliver that to our customers, not just today, but in the future. If we go on to the next slide, one of the ways that we have really significantly invested to keep our generation clean is in solar energy. Many years ago, we converted many of our old oil plants to natural gas, which kept us among the cleanest in the country. And now we are aggressively investing in solar generation throughout Florida, which has continued to keep FPL among the cleanest of the power companies in the country. Our emissions are typically more than 30% below the national average. If you also happen to pay attention, when the clock struck January 1 of this year, we have eliminated all coal from our portfolio here in Florida as of January 1st. And I think we're one of the only companies in the country that has been able to say that. We're rapidly expanding solar for any of you who drive up through the middle of the state, throughout the state. We are building large-scale solar projects under our 30 by 30 plan, which we have committed to installing more than 30 million panels by 2030. And we are well on our way to that, with about 14 projects under construction as we speak. As part of that, we have our Solar Together program, which is the largest community solar program in the country. And we're also have underway a construction of the world's largest battery, which, paired with all of our solar, will allow us to use solar even when the sun's not shining at night. We're also looking way ahead, and we're really testing the waters and learning more about green hydrogen technology that we hope will one day allow us to provide completely emissions-free electricity. If we go to the next slide, another way that we are significantly investing and have been investing is in our grid. And we are known to have the most reliable grid. I'm sorry, if you can change the slide. There we go. We have had the most reliable grid in the country for 5 of the last 6 years. Again, it doesn't happen by accident. We started making investments more than 10 years ago to make it stronger and smarter. So we've undergrounded, whoops, go slide back, thank you. We've invested to make it stronger by hardening, and we've invested to make it smarter so that we have smart meters for every customer and smart devices, which have allowed us to restore power so much more quickly, and also to have data so that we can predict outages before they happen. If you can go back a couple slides. What I wanted to say, if we go to the very next slide, that'd be great. All this investment, which has happened over the last 15 years, is the very reason that our bills have stayed among the most affordable. If you could go forward 2 slides, I'm sorry. One more forward. Could go 2 more forward, I'm sorry. And I'll keep talking while you get to that slide. The investments that we've made in our generation and our grid have kept our bills among the most affordable, and our bills are about 30% below the national average. And in fact, our bills are lower today than they were 15 years ago. We can go back to, let's see, I'll get you on, okay, one more slide forward and I think we'll be up to speed. One more slide forward, please. There we go. You know, while we've made these investments, whoops, you could stay where we were, that'd be great. What I wanted to say was, you know, we've made these long-term investments, keeping in mind that Florida, right here is where we want to be, thanks. You know, the investments in Florida are unique because our state is so rapidly growing with so many people coming per day. Our data shows us that between 2018 and 2025, we have to prepare to add another 500,000 customers to our grid. That's about 1 million people. And so we're preparing for that. And all the while recognizing that Florida is one of the top places for hurricanes. So that's another reason why we've made the decisions to really invest in the grid so that it can withstand weather, not just hurricane season, but the day-to-day weather that we get. And the investments that we made so far have really proven that we've improved our reliability and been able to do that. If we go to the next slide, you know, one of the things that we do is we try to provide rate predictability. And as our rate agreement with the PSC expires this year, we will be moving forward to reset rates. And we are going to continue to take the same very disciplined approach to doing that over multi-years and geared towards making those investments that will continue to keep our bills low and maintain reliability for our customers. If we could go a couple slides ahead, please. We've been doing this all the while this year, keeping in mind the pandemic and the impacts that it's had on our customers. So we've worked really hard to find ways to help all of our customers during such a challenging year through 2020 and now through 2021. And we've been doing things such as working through people who have hardships, waiving disconnects. We did that for about 6 months, offering special discounts, and are continuing to work with customers as we navigate our way back to a recovery. We did things like accelerating refunds and things like that. We also have maintained a focus on education. That's something that our company has always believed in, and we really pivoted in 2020 to provide much of it virtually. At our Manatee Lagoon, where we have summer programs, we pivoted and offered a whole online summer program for thousands of kids over the summer. This fall, we're offering a marine science program online, and we even introduced a full online energy curriculum that meets the Florida standards for middle school students with teacher plans and so forth to really give kids a deeper understanding about energy in a virtual manner that they can still continue with their education today. We're also working to find laptops to donate across the state. We know that providing that virtual experience for all of our kids is so important right now. If we go to the next slide, we also know that small businesses are really taking the hit right now. We know that they're the backbone of our trillion-dollar economy, and that's why we're working to really stand with them and help them navigate through this difficult time. And so we launched our Main Street Recovery Program, which will offer discounts to small businesses through 2021 on a monthly basis. You can go onto our website and find out if you're eligible for that. And we're working one-on-one with these businesses to help access CARES funds and also through energy efficiency programs to help them save money, particularly now. And then lastly, on the next slide, our economic development team was created 10 years ago to help us pull out of the recession. And so we're trying to use that team now to navigate through this crisis through 2020 and 2021. This is a team that has brought $90 billion worth of impact to the state over the last 10 years, helping to create more than 30,000 jobs. And what we've done this past year is we've built things on our website, tools to partner with our local economic development organizations to provide virtual tours. We've entered into partnerships with 4 state colleges to offer a laptop program to assist with the rapid credentialing programs to help people who were put out of work get back to work. And also, most importantly, I think we're very excited about our 35 Mules incubator to help drive innovation in Florida and bring startups from around the country to Florida, working with our executives and with all the resources that we can provide to help these startups get to the next level. They're based right at our headquarters, and we're hoping that as they advance to the next level in their journey, that they will choose Florida to locate and set up their business. So just wanted to give you a quick update on all the things that we're doing at FPL to support you, all of our very valuable customers, and how we navigate through this following year together. Thank you for having me, and thank you for being such wonderful partners. And I'll turn it back over to Dodie to continue with the Housing Summit. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us. I'm sitting in for Suzanne Cabrera with the Housing Leadership Council, who's our president and CEO. I'm Dodie Glass. I'm with Gentile Glass, Holloway, O'Mahony and Associates, or 2GHO. We're land planners and landscape architects. I have had the pleasure of serving on the council for a number of years. And I want to take a moment to thank our partners that have been with us as well through the assorted efforts that we've been exploring the last few years related to housing policy that have grown out of the Palm Beach County Summit and the steering committee. And it's exciting for us to be able to talk about the next steps. Our partners, the Community Foundation of Palm Beach and Martin County, JP Morgan Chase, United Bank United, Freddie Mac, Wells Fargo have all been with us through an assortment of studies and efforts. We have actually within the Housing Leadership Council a large group of members that are assorted backgrounds and experiences within the housing community. One of the things that's important to note with HLC is it was sort of the brainchild and it was created through the Economic Council. In 2005, the Economic Council had formed a working group looking at housing and recognizing that the affordability of housing for employers, for the workforce, was a critical part of the economic stability of Palm Beach County. That work group actually went on to initiate in 2006 a needs assessment. That needs assessment was done by the Florida International University Metropolitan Center. And from that, it was the growth of the Housing Leadership Council. That volunteer group became a nonprofit that has been operating since 2007, looking at county housing policies and ways to facilitate housing for workforce in Palm Beach County. Right now, we have a number of committees that have been active. There's been assorted things that we have been involved in. The two standing committees that have been most active are our Housing Policy Committee, and that policy committee was involved with Palm Beach County in working on the revisions to the workforce housing program. But it's also been involved with advocacy and working to try to get the Sadowski funds that we all thought we would see here that would help benefit production of housing. And we're still hopeful to see here in terms of providing funding in ways that we could use for production. We have also a newly activated communication committee, and that committee will be reaching out. And one of the things that HLC has done throughout its history has been involved with both private and public sector officials and nonprofits, developers, builders. We sometimes find ourselves in an advocacy role for projects that come in because we've dealt with issues like NIMBYism. The funding issue has been sort of the biggest focus. When the summit was held several years ago, there were task forces across the county, and most of the task forces met, were active. The bottom line is that the production of housing was key. But understanding, and we hadn't had a needs assessment update, looking at what our market and having a better understanding of what the housing supply is and where we might be able to facilitate housing development in areas where we know that we need it most. The Housing Leadership Council began again with another housing needs assessment. And I want to take a moment to thank both FP&L and GL Homes for being sponsors of that assessment study along with us and our partners so that we could get the base information and work to develop the next steps for housing. One of the things that we're looking at, which we are reactivating the activity that was in the steering committee that put on the summit several years ago, is to develop a workforce and housing plan for Palm Beach County. We're excited to take this needs assessment, the next step, and involve the rest of the community in that effort. So today, to kick that off, we have with us Dr. Ned Murray, who is another AICP planner like myself with 25 plus years in both planning and housing and economic policy here in the area. He's been with the, he is an associate director for the George Perez Center for Florida International University in the Metropolitan Center, and they have been the lead of the needs assessment. Mr. Murray has been involved with a multitude of housing issues in South Florida. He's been the principal investigator for the Miami Affordable Housing Plan and also the needs assessment and market analysis for Broward County. Besides his background in housing, he's also authored many articles and been involved with the American Planning Association in their publications on economic development. The driver for HLC came from the Economic Council's concern for the economic importance for workforce housing. Today, we look across what's going on with housing, and the opportunity with the needs assessment is to get some updated information so we can proceed with the development of a workforce housing plan. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Murray, Dr. Murray, to present the findings of the study. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and I would like to thank the Housing Leadership Council of Palm Beach County entrusting us with this important study that we just completed. I will, let's see, share this with you in a sec. Once again, as Dodie had mentioned, the Metropolitan Center was in Palm Beach working with the Economic Development Council back in 2005. And that was the first housing needs assessment that we had done for Palm Beach County. And then we came back and when the Housing Leadership Council had spun off from the EDC to do an update of that in 2008. The purpose of the current affordable housing needs assessment is really to bring together the analytics and the market dynamics so that we can provide the analytical underpinning, so to speak, of the policy direction that the county and various organizations need to move forward. So with this 2020 update, now 2021, we have that opportunity, but the main goal here is to provide those analytics and then to begin to think in terms of what are the policy implications and what are the opportunities that the county has to address its affordable housing needs. When we started this particular housing needs assessment, of course, we were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is a really critical discussion that we need to have moving forward, because the COVID lens to the county's housing affordable housing needs issues has really changed. And in many ways, what's happened here is that we have this perfect storm brought about by the economic shock of the COVID-19 pandemic. Pre-COVID, as we all know, we already had a brewing public policy crisis in affordable housing. And then due to COVID, we had massive job loss in the first month in April, and that has kept going, fortunately not to that level. But then, of course, that creates lost income. And then since the last 5 or 6 months or so, we've had this situation of unprecedented home buying by outsiders who have come in and created market appreciation, which has obviously heightened these pre-existing market conditions. So it really is a perfect storm. So the issue for the county and all its stakeholders is to be able to tackle COVID, but at the same time, understand that we already had this pressing affordable housing need that has to be addressed at the same time. It's a concurrent type of issue because we're talking affordable housing, an affordable housing crisis, coupled with job loss, income loss, and unprecedented appreciation in the market. So all of this is happening, and obviously it's created this perfect storm. But the way we'd like to see it when we do the analytics is to think about what does that mean, not only in terms of the policy challenges moving forward, but what are the opportunities to address these longstanding issues. So some of the numbers, which I think are really important in terms of the impacts, the COVID impacts, which we've been tracking since February. Number one is, and we've been updating this, all these numbers as we've gone along since February. So at this juncture, through the December numbers that we have available to us, to the state's Department of Economic Opportunity, we've lost over 50,000 jobs. Those jobs have not come back. Now, obviously, the unemployment rate has come down significantly, but if you look at the real unemployment rate, and then we can talk about this later, we're probably still around 12%. And when you're going through an economic recovery, it's the real unemployment rate that's critical. So that's a major issue. Now, as far as the unemployment rates, those are also very high in many of the locations in the county as well, in a lot of the municipalities. And that is obviously driving a lot of the issues that we're seeing in terms of the economic impacts of the COVID crisis. So in communities like Riviera Beach, we're at almost near 10% unemployment, Boynton Beach 7.1, Lake Worth about 6.8. So there's some real issues there. Now, as far as the job loss, most of the job losses are occurring in accommodation food services, but they're also among the self-employed, contract workers, temp workers, and retail workers. And this continues, this job shedding has continued. In fact, since March, we've had over 191,000 new claimants for unemployment in Palm Beach County. And for the week ending January 9th, and last week, we've seen this spike in new claimants. So obviously things have gotten a little bit worse over the past month or so. Now, as far as the housing demand conditions are concerned, that we're looking at significant gaps that have been created, due to this unprecedented level of COVID-related market activity, and that's of course coupled with the loss of owner and renter household income. Now, it's important to note that the median household income of renters in Palm Beach County, which is $42,233, is only 58% of owners. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, because that's where the greatest need exists right now. Now, as far as those who are most impacted by the job losses, the majority are obviously in these lower wage service sector occupations, where we have hourly wages that translate to workers 60% of the county's median income. Now, we also have an issue where there's a growing level of cost burden. We have just under 98,000 cost burden renters in Palm Beach County, but the growing category has been the severely cost burden, where we now have over 51,000 renter households that are cost burden, and that's been the fastest growing segment of the cost burden population. So that's a critical issue as well. Now, as far as projections go, and this is where future housing demand is and the need that we need to calculate, according to the Department of Economic Opportunities, their projections, their 8-year-out projections to 2027, they're looking at the jobs that will gain the most over the next 8 years will be in typical, jobs that we see already in the market, and those being retail, food prep, and customer service reps. So this trend of renter need and cost burden renters is going to continue. So notwithstanding future economic impacts, DEO's projected employment estimates indicate that most of Palm Beach County's future housing need will be towards lower income renters. Now, as far as cost by municipality, we're looking at some of the major municipalities in the county as well. So the study that we did wasn't just of the county, but we did take in the major municipalities. And in fact, we've also included all the other municipalities in terms of community profiles. But among the major municipalities, we're seeing very significant numbers in terms of cost burden, owner and renter households in many of these communities. In fact, very higher than the county average when you look at places like Green Acres, which is almost at 65%. Lake Worth is over 65%. Riviera Beach is about 64%. So some of the individual municipalities are higher than the county as a whole. Now, another discussion that comes up, maybe not as much as it should, but certainly was a key part of our study, was to look at poverty in Palm Beach County, because that issue has really resonated since COVID. And what we have found is that the poverty rates, even though they had sunk a little bit from 2018 to where we are now in 2018, in terms of the data, they have really elevated over the last year or two. And at this point, we're looking at probably, we're looking at poverty rates in some of these communities in excess of 20, 30%, particularly in places like Belle Glade, Pahokee, but also Lake Worth is over 25%. Riviera Beach is at almost 23%. And when we estimate that those numbers have probably gone up over the last year because of COVID, because we know that about 8 million individuals have gone into poverty during that time. Now, as far as affordable housing supply side of the equation, we've seen this increase in renter demand since 2014 for a lot of different reasons. Home ownership has come down, even though the county still has a very high home ownership rate. But what's really been happening over the last couple of years is the increase in rent, which is up to almost $1,900 for a 2-bedroom. That's the average rent. And you have an affordable rent level of only $1,058. Palm Beach County's most current $425,000 median single family price is obviously become quite extraordinary, and it's part of that market spree that I talked about earlier. We're at a point now where we have an affordability ratio of about 7.2 to 1. So obviously that's not a sustainable type of situation because we're looking at only about 17% of households in Palm Beach County that could afford that type of price. Condos have gone up as well. Now, when we look at the affordable housing supply and demand by the numbers, the big numbers that we're focused on right now is that right now we have a demand gap of about 33,334 units in the moderate price range. That's the 80 to 120% of MHI. And about 44,000 unit gap in the lower income, that's less than 80% of MHI renter units. So those are pretty large numbers. Now, in terms of the county's workforce housing program, obviously they've been doing what they can with the funding that they have, but they've only really produced about 485 workforce housing units and another for rent and another 92 units for sale. So obviously there's this great demand, but obviously we don't have the housing programs in place nor the funding in place to do that. Now, the other big issue that the analysis found was that we're losing through market appreciation since 2014, over 17,000 units per year, but in terms of both renter and owners, just through market appreciation alone. Now, that doesn't even factor in what's going on over the last 9 months. So what we expect to see over the next year or two is that that annual loss of units through market appreciation is going to even get worse. The other level of analysis we did at the request of the Housing Leadership Council was to look at an annual supply gap in terms of housing construction against population growth. Just are we keeping up just in terms of housing unit construction to begin with? And what we found was there's an average annual supply gap over the last 10 years of over 2,732 units per year. So we're not even addressing the market demand for housing in general, let alone the market demand for affordable housing. I mentioned, of course, the increase in the median sale price. It was 425,000, as I mentioned, in December. That's almost a 17% increase year over year. And this all really started about in May. That's when we began to see this unprecedented level of investing in homes in South Florida, not just here in Palm Beach, but obviously in other parts of Florida. And that has really increased the single family median price as it has the condos, which has gone up to 230,000 in the past month. Now, the other issue that we're dealing with once again is the rent cost, and we're looking at different submarkets now. And if we look at the various submarkets, we're finding that in most cases, we're looking at average rent for a 2-bedroom that far exceed the ability of Palm Beach renters to afford them. We're close to 2,000 in most communities, over 2,000 in Delray and Boca, and close to 2,000 in parts of West Palm Beach. So this is obviously a major concern going forward. Now, I mentioned the owner-occupied and units that we've been losing through appreciation and the renters. Well, as I said, this has all happened in the past 5 years. And so on an average, we're looking at 13,419 units are being lost in terms of the owner units to appreciation, and 14,513 in renter units. So this is a trend that we expect to continue over the next few years, especially with the levels of appreciation that we're seeing right now. Now, the gaps, when we begin to look at them relative to income, are obviously excessive. When we look at the median household income of Palm Beach County, we know that the median household income of about just under $60,000, and coupled with the median single family selling price of $425, creates enormous gaps at all income levels under 140% of median. So obviously that is a major concern going forward as well. Now, as far as the rents, what we're also seeing there is big gaps. And a lot of this has to do not only with because we have high existing rents, but because we also have very high asking rents. And those asking rents are creating some huge gaps right now in terms of affordable housing. Now, when we begin to look at who this impacts, we break it down by the various occupations, both the essential and professional occupations in Palm Beach County. And when you look at the various occupations, these are the top occupations that exist. Almost all of them fall under 100% of median. And in fact, many of them fall under 80% of median, including emergency medical technicians and office administrative support, transportation workers, construction workers. Then, of course, you've got workers such as nursing assistants and sales and food prep people who are earning under 50% of the median household income. So obviously the housing market, the way it is, both at the owner and renter level, are far in excess of what our typical worker household can afford. Now, which brings us really to what are the policy challenges and opportunities based upon the data findings, based upon the market analytics. And what we've come up with, and I think this is really where the discussion needs to go at this point at the county level, is using this analytical underpinning, a framework, a platform, whatever you want to call it. We need to begin to think of housing policy challenges and opportunities in terms of 4 critical issues. One is, number one, an urgent call for action, housing affordability and economic resilience. That would be the number one. And what we're talking about here is that the current housing market is unsustainable and is negatively impacting the county's economic competitiveness and quality of life. So this is critical. This urgent call for action, this perfect storm that I was talking about earlier, it can't wait because it's not only affecting, obviously, our workers in terms of their ability to pay the rent or the mortgage, but obviously it's damaging the county's economic competitiveness and overall quality of life for all that live here. The other thing we need to be focused on is this need for a collective commitment on focused implementation strategies. And what we're talking about here are carefully crafted strategies, incentives, and performance targets that are market responsive, highly prioritized, and attainable. Market responsive, highly prioritized, and attainable. These are the types of implementation strategies that need to be considered by the county. By when I say the county, I'm also talking about municipal governments, the private sector, and obviously the nonprofit sector. And thirdly, there is a need for an effective and targeted affordable housing development toolbox. Focus on identifying and establishing funding sources and incentives that can be effectively targeted, leveraged, and quickly utilized along with federal and state resources. So we need to identify what these are, these local resources that can be created through public-private partnerships, through whatever types of mechanisms that the county and municipalities have in place. But what's critical is that these incentives are targeted, leveraged, and be able to be quickly utilized. And the fourth is that we need to leverage long-term strategies with near-term opportunities. Short-term affordable housing strategies should be able to hit the ground running, positioned to immediately implement the highest priority investments, programs, and projects. This can't wait. So there's a lot that needs to be done short-term to address this perfect storm that I was talking about. But so we're talking about programs that need to be put in place, investments that need to happen, projects, maybe smaller level projects that need to be put in place immediately, and along with longer term projects as well. And then last but not least, we want to talk about affordable housing linked to climate change agenda. Now, the county has this incredible opportunity to look at a number of different issues at once and to create an integrated policy agenda aimed at affordable housing, the economy, the job loss that we're dealing with, and obviously climate change. So if we put together an affordable housing agenda, policy agenda linked to the climate change agenda, we can tackle a lot of that at once. It's an incredible one-time opportunity that the county may have. So what we'd be looking at is that county's investment in affordable housing, in addition to its economic development impacts, would represent an opportunity to significantly improve the county's resilience capacity, its energy consumption, and carbon footprint. So all these things could be looked at in terms of this larger affordable housing policy agenda. The other aspect of that is adaptability. adaptability will be key to this policy agenda, with a need to focus on well-planned infill development, equitable transit-oriented development, green building, and green jobs. Obviously, a lot of this is very consistent with the new administration's agenda, and the county can be up front on this, but we do it through an integrated policy agenda that links affordable housing with economic development and climate change. So with that, I thank you and look forward to the rest of the summit. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Murray. That was a very interesting presentation, and you've given us, all of us, food for thought. We're going to go on to the panel part of our program. My name is Skip Miller. I'm an attorney with Greenspoon Marder, and I am going to be the moderator. In my real job, I'm an attorney with, I'm also the chair of the Public Policy Committee of the Housing Leadership Council. And we've got a great distinguished panel this afternoon. We have Representative David Silvers, we have County Commissioner Greg Weiss, we have Assistant County Administrator Patrick Rutter, and we have Housing Leadership Council Chair Jack Weir. And I'm going to introduce them all right now, and then we'll go right into the questions. First, Representative Silvers. State Representative David Silvers was born and raised in South Florida. He earned a degree in economics from the University of Florida and a joint law degree and MBA from the University of Miami. Representative Silvers is now president of a Palm Beach County publishing company and uses his experience running a business to be a community advocate. He was also instrumental in developing the international division of MovieTickets.com, a worldwide leader in advanced movie ticketing, and helped grow Hometown Communications, a cable system in Port St. Lucie. First elected in November 2016 and re-elected subsequently, Representative Silvers serves on the following committees: Commerce Committee as the Democratic ranking member, Infrastructure and Tourism Appropriations Subcommittee, Public Integrity and Elections Committee, Tourism, Infrastructure and Energy Committee, and the Ways and Means Committee. Welcome, Representative Silvers. Next, we have County Commissioner Greg Weiss. Commissioner Greg Weiss was elected to the District 2 seat of the Palm Beach County Board of County Commissioners in November of 2018. He currently serves as Vice Chair of the Governing Board of the Palm Beach County Solid Waste Authority. Prior to his election, he served as Vice Chair on the West Palm Beach Planning Board and numerous other boards of area organizations and nonprofits. Currently, Greg sits on the Palm Beach Transportation Planning Agency Governing Board, the Water Resources Task Force, the Palm Beach County Cultural Council Board of Directors, and the 15th Judicial Circuit Juvenile Justice Advisory Board. Greg was born and raised in Southern California. After graduating from the University of California at Irvine with degrees in economics and social ecology, he made a career in the then emerging computer industry. Greg worked his way up to becoming a business executive, overseeing sales, marketing, and strategy for several Fortune 500 companies. Greg and his wife of 28 years, Rebecca, retired while in their 40s and decided to sail the world on their 50-foot boat named Kimba. After doing so for several years, they anchored in the Lake Worth Lagoon in 2004 and decided to make West Palm Beach their new home. Ever since, Greg has been active in the community as a volunteer and board member. He was the president of the West Palm Beach Police Foundation and a founding member of Speak Up for Kids. Greg regularly patrols his neighborhood and serves as its Citizen Observer Patrol captain, and Rebecca foster parents kittens for the Peggy Adams Rescue League. Greg is a member of Temple Israel. Commissioner Weiss's District 2 priorities include being a responsible steward of tax dollars, promoting economic development that supports good-paying jobs, protecting and preserving our environment and water supply, and striving to attain affordable quality housing for all county residents. Welcome, Commissioner Weiss. Our next panelist is Assistant County Administrator Patrick Rutter. He was kind enough to fill in for us. Virginia Baker was supposed to be the panelist, but she could not make it because of a family emergency. Patrick was named Assistant County Administrator in May of 2018. Mr. Rutter joined Palm Beach County in 2003, serving as the Chief Planner in the Planning Division, and was subsequently selected as Executive Director of the Planning, Zoning, and Building Department in 2016. In his current role, Mr. Rutter helps the County Administrator manage the day-to-day operations of Palm Beach County government and oversees the planning, zoning, and building, engineering and public works, environmental resources management, water resources management, the Office of Resilience, and the Office of Community Revitalization Departments. Patrick Rutter has played a pivotal role in a number of planning-related initiatives, including the creation and implementation of a mandatory inclusionary zoning program to accommodate workforce housing. Mr. Rutter, a Florida native and Gators fan, holds a master's degree in urban and regional planning from the University of Florida. Welcome, Patrick. Our fourth panelist is Jack Weir. Jack is the chair of the Housing Leadership Council of Palm Beach County. Jack has served as president and CEO of Eastwind since 2007. During that time, Eastwind developed over 3,000 units in 21 multifamily projects, including a number of workforce housing developments. Previously, Mr. Weir was senior vice president of a private real estate firm based in Palm Beach County from 1994 to 2007, where he was responsible for all strategic and project financing and oversaw all acquisition and development activities. He was directly responsible for the financing, closing, and development of over 40 multifamily projects involving over 6,000 multifamily units in Florida and 5 other states. He also negotiated and administered a joint venture with Lincoln Property Company for the management of the company's Florida properties. He has extensive experience in arranging construction, permanent mezzanine loan, and equity financing from a wide range of banking, insurance, and institutional capital sources, as well as multifamily tax-exempt bond programs and all major federal, state, and local public loan programs. Previously, Mr. Weir founded and led Local Initiatives Managed Assets Corporation, one of the first housing finance firms to offer investment securities backed by long-term fixed-rate mortgages to affordable multifamily properties. He has been a corporate and securities attorney with the law firm of Debevoise and Plimpton in New York City, is a graduate of Harvard Law School, attended the University of St. Andrews in Scotland on a Rotary Fellowship, and received a BA in History from the University of Scranton. He has been admitted to the bar in Florida, New York, and New Jersey. He is the chairman of the Housing Leadership Council of Palm Beach County and chairs the Workforce Housing Subcommittee of the Economic Council of Palm Beach County. Welcome, Jack. Are we ready for some questions now? Our first question, this question is for the group. Two-part question. Part one, what is the single thing that the county can do that would have the most impact on the supply of affordable and workforce housing in the county? Second part, is that something you would personally support and advocate for? And if funding is required, what amount of funding would you support? And we're going to start with Representative Silvers. If you could please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I would answer it from the state's perspective, if that's okay.
Yes.
Well, I personally think that funds and housing trust funds should be used for their intended purpose. So my goal would be to make sure that the funds set aside from a doc stamp be used for affordable housing and not be used to be swept in for budgetary shortfalls. So I think that's a good start.
Yes, thank you. We're going to next go to Commissioner Weiss.
Good morning, and thanks for having me here today. I think to answer your question, we need to look at it in 2 different ways. I mean, short-term and long-term. I think the short-term, it's a supply side issue, and that's to create more units. But on the long-term, I think we need to look at the demand side and address the underlying causes of affordability crisis, which is really a manifestation, if you will, of unequal distribution of income. And that's caused, of course, by unequal distribution of skills, training, and productivity. What can the county do for short term? If you assume the cost of a unit breaks down, a third land, a third building, and a third government regulations, then I think the costs, we can lower the cost of land per se by increasing density, if you will, by creating the ability to build more units on the property. Relaxing regulations is something else that we can do. And I think providing incentives for the producers of the affordable units. It's not just a supply issue though, but it's a quality of the supply, because we have vacant units in the county, but people don't want to live there because of the conditions. So we've got to figure out a way to create sustainable, affordable homes in neighborhoods that provide a mix of residents by age and socioeconomic. So we also need our private sector to help us with that.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm next going to go to Patrick Rutter.
And thank you all for having me. And on behalf of the county administrator, wanted to send greetings. Appreciate you all allowing me to pinch hit for her this morning. I'm going to kind of echo Commissioner Weiss's point, just deal with it more so in the short term. I think some of the questions that are going to come to me in a little bit show that we've got a variety of programs. Creating units is as much a function of, yes, new, and as the commissioner was talking about, rehabbing other units. And we like to work along that broadest of spectrums to create a housing unit, however it may occur, and try to pay a lot of attention to rehabbing a unit, finding existing ones, whether it's scattered lots and building new, or units that are existing that have good bones and could just stand for repair and work of that sort. So I think keeping options in the broadest spectrum available, from our inclusionary program down to helping replace roofs and air conditioning units and things of that sort to make them viable units, having the greatest number of options would be the best approach.
Thank you, Patrick. And Jack, you get to that cleanup here.
Thank you, Skip. So if you can come away with one thought from today's summit, it's the need for more gap financing. As Dr. Murray outlined, even on a market level, we're not producing units to keep up with population demand. So we have a problem of scale, and achieving the scale where we can make a meaningful dent in the problem. On the state side, that means that we not only need to get a full appropriation this year, but we need to be able to count on it every year. There needs to be legislation that basically prevents sweeps of the Housing Trust Fund. It's not a slush fund, it's a trust fund. And real estate development is not an instantaneous process. It takes time to develop the infrastructure and develop the sites. If we have 15 million this year and 3 million next year and 6 million the following year and 1 million the next year, we can't build up the infrastructure that we need. The second thing is the county is the third largest county in Florida. It does need to take control of its own destiny. And in that regard, it needs to have a dedicated source of gap financing. Commissioner Bernard put on the table last spring before the pandemic, a housing bond. And the previous summit, which was in 2017, took input from a series of regional subcommittees and came up with a number of recommendations. Their recommendation was a bond issue that would provide a dedicated source of gap financing. What it means as a developer is land that went for $10,000 a unit 10 years ago is now 40, 45, 50,000 a unit. Construction costs have basically doubled in the last 10 years. So the only way that a developer can make the numbers work is either to have higher rents or have higher home purchase prices. So what the gap financing does is enables to replace high cost equity with low cost subordinate gap financing. You lower your cost of capital, that enables you to charge lower rents or lower home prices on a number of units. And you would sign a declaration of covenants that basically says for an extended period of time, 15, 20, 30 years, that the prices will be lower or the rents will be lower in return for this subordinate gap financing. There are other things that the county can do, but that is the single most important thing to start to achieve scale in the production of more workforce and affordable housing.
Okay, thank you, Jack. So I'm going to now pivot to Commissioner Weiss. Do you support a bond issue to provide funding for affordable and workforce housing? If so, how large a bond issue, and how would you like to see the proceeds spent? And if not, why not?
Thanks. So affordable housing and homelessness is a strategic priority for our board and has been for a number of years. I am inclined to be supportive of a bond. The current programs, though well-intended, have not been able to keep up clearly with the demand, and we're seeing the results of this. As to the size of the bond, I have to say I'm probably agnostic about it because I don't, how much are we able to do and what are we going to be able to do with it? I mean, I think the challenge is really what our voters, our constituents are willing to support. What are we going to do? How are we going to get the most bang for our buck with these funds? And I think Jack mentioned, this idea of gap financing. But how do we make sure too that we're moving people from affordable housing into housing where their wages allow them to afford it without a subsidy? Because that's going to be key. Because if all we're doing is building housing and the wages don't keep up, the demand is going to increase beyond what we're able to produce. So it's going to be a challenge for us. And that's where I say we have to work on both sides, but I'm inclined to support a bond. I'm not an expert on how big it has to be, but what the experts tell me, then that's what you can expect that I'll get behind, assuming the community will get behind it as well, which I think they will.
Great, thank you very much. The next two questions I have are for Representative Silvers. First question is, given the state's financial situation in light of COVID-19 and the governor's proposed budget, would you support allocating the $200 million plus sitting in the state and local government housing trust funds unallocated to affordable housing? If so, what strings, if any, would you put on its use? And if not, why not?
Thank you very much. Before I answer that question, I do want to mention one thing. I heard Jack Weir mention about we need legislation to prevent bills of the sweeping of the trust funds. And that's the reason why I filed HB 13 this year. I filed those type of bills every year in and year out. And it's actually bipartisan. So just want to show you that we are trying up in Tallahassee. Unfortunately, it's not moving, but that's a whole nother issue. Given the states, yes, I support allocating the funds. It is my understanding that the 200 million was not allocated because it was replaced by CARES funds. But I would like to see the new CARES funds be additional funds, not as replacement funds. And I believe in home rule. And Commissioner Weiss, I think you understand that I've been fighting for home rule for local government for the last 4 years. Yeah. You were elected to do your job. I think we should be letting the county commission, the city commissioners to do their job. And it's very frustrating with what happens in leadership up in Tallahassee, and they want to be able to usurp that power. But I would not propose any additional strings other than anything that's already in statute. So just let the county commission rule, and they've got control. Let them do it.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to follow up on House Bill 13, if I may. For those of you not familiar, House Bill 13, which Representative Silvers is co-sponsoring, would prohibit the legislature from transferring unappropriated cash balances in the state and local government housing trust funds into the Budget Stabilization Fund or the General Revenue Fund. My question is, how is this different from current law? And if this bill becomes law, how would it protect these trust funds from being swept?
Well, current law doesn't prohibit the funds from being swept, so it would prevent that from happening. The year after, I mentioned before, year after year, these funds have been swept for budgetary shortfalls, and I would like to see the funds used for their intended purpose for affordable housing. And like I mentioned before, with CARES funds being allocated, not being allocated or allocated to prevent the funds to be allocated, it's just very frustrating to me. And I think it's a bit short-sighted because these trust funds could create 20 to 30,000 jobs and have a $4 billion impact in our economy. And this is actually coming from the Revenue Estimating Conference from 2019. So I understand. Well, actually, I don't understand. I don't understand why we keep sweeping the funds. I would like to see them used for their intended purpose. And my bill prohibits the movement of funds from the local government housing trust fund and the state housing trust fund, similarly to the lottery trust fund and the Florida Retirement System Trust Fund. The funds can only be used for their intended purpose, and that would be the impact of the bill.
Great. Thank you very much for that. My next question is for Patrick Rudder. And Patrick, I was going to ask these as separate questions, but they kind of all run together. So I'm going to ask them all at once. Is that all right with you?
Absolutely.
All right. So the first part of the question is, what existing county programs have had the most impact on the supply of affordable and workforce housing in Palm Beach County? Part two, what existing county programs and policies for affordable and workforce housing have not been successful? And part three, how would you rate Palm Beach County's programs, policies, and funding for affordable and workforce housing when compared to those of other large counties in Florida?
Gotcha. So starting with part one, would point out, I'm going to give you a little bit of an update to Dr. Murray's numbers they had on our workforce housing program, our inclusionary program. They're always changing based on the approvals that we have in place. Our most recent numbers, we've got over 2,500 units obligated to be constructed. Obviously, they're not built. Our workforce units would flow when the market rate project is built. So as we sit here today, we're close to actually 750 units of rental that is built and or available. And then we've actually got about 184 sale units built or available, owned or available or in some form of development construction sort of thing. So on the one hand, that's obviously the drop in the bucket. On the other hand, I'd like to argue that it's a great opportunity. It's just another one of those tools that's out there, and it's, you know, doing what we can in our part to provide a program that helps those in need. The other one I would point out that highlight is our impact fee affordable housing program, where we take interest earned on impact fees per the impact fee zone and put that money out every year for affordable housing programs. I'm just looking through the last few years, we've ranged from $2 million to up to $3 million in money that's been put out and available to be used for affordable housing programs. So kind of veering that into that second part, to a degree, I think it shows the county's creativity in trying to find ways to make something happen, to find a program, make something work. When you would ask then in that part two, what's been successful or not, looking at either of those, be it the workforce program or the impact fee one, at any given moment, they may not be going gangbusters. I would say that in 2010, 2011, 2012, when we were in the depths of a recession, we weren't building market rate projects at any great pace. Thus, we weren't delivering any workforce units. Our world has been back pretty darn strong now for 5, 6, 7 years or so, and we've really seen the uptick in the delivery of the units per our inclusionary program. So at any given time, any given program might not be running super hot, but our impact fee program, again, looking at the numbers, we had $3 million out there in 2020. Just back in 2018, it was a little bit under 2. So programs change year to year. Having them in place, holding on to them, maintaining them, we think is very important and provides that continuity and those opportunities. Then I think your third part was, how do we compare to other counties? Obviously, every county is different and how they work. Palm Beach County, our unincorporated portion, I think it's about 45-ish% of the population. The rest is in municipalities. Some of our regulatory, our inclusionary zoning only applies in unincorporated Palm Beach County. So we're talking about that sample size of the portion that we represent. I'd like to think, again, that we're creative. There are not a ton of inclusionary programs out there. Certainly there are a few cities in the county that have employed them, but it's one of those tools that we use. Our infrastructure sales tax, we've got $25 million that's coming off $2.5 million a year. So that's another one of those opportunities that we've used. And we've done with our cottage homes project, for instance, is one that I think will be starting to come out of the ground in the near future. So another one of those points that we're trying to find the things that work for us, that work in Palm Beach County, that meet what we need, work with our neighbors, et cetera, and find those best opportunities and make it happen.
Okay, thank you. I have a follow-up question for either you or Commissioner Weiss, and that is, how much does the county spend annually for workforce and affordable housing that is not passed through from another source, for example, SHIP, home, and CDBG?
You get that one, Patrick.
Gotcha. Thank you, Commissioner. Numbers. We have mentioned about $2.5 million on our impact fee interest program, another 2.5 from our infrastructure sales tax program. We average about $12 million in ad valorem, and it's gone up to about 15 million over the last 3 years. That represents funding spent on housing for all programs under 140% of AMI. So to be clear, that includes our homeless spending as well. But I think we would all understand, and I would argue strongly, that our homeless, the need to address our homeless situation is an important facet of our overall housing program. But we're in that $15 million a year range from a variety of different sources.
Mr. Weiss, is there anything you want to add to that?
Well, I think he gave you the numbers. I mean, that's what they are. I think when you start looking at, you know, when you plow in everything else, it's, you know, with the federal and the state dollars coming in, I mean, it's not enough, but there is a sizable amount of money. And I think he said $3 million of general funds money being put strictly into affordable housing.
Okay, well, thank you both for that. The next question is for Jack Weir. Actually, the next two questions. First question, Jack. What changes in existing land use and zoning codes would have the biggest impact on increasing the supply of workforce affordable housing in Palm Beach County?
Okay, Skip, before I respond to that, if I can respond to the prior question, the last part about what other counties are doing. Our peer counties, Miami-Dade County, has a built-in advantage because they have the surtax. They get over 20 million a year from the surtax, which is a specific Miami-Dade County phenomenon. But in addition, the county in 2019 did a $400 million bond issue, of which they dedicated $100 million for affordable housing and workforce housing. The city of Miami separately did another $85 million bond issue, strictly focused on affordable and workforce housing. So they've made the determination that in order to make a meaningful impact on the product, what the feds provide and what the state provides, they need to do more themselves. Broward County started with an annual appropriation of general revenue of $5 million. It's now up to $10 million. They've also dedicated 50% of the revenues from expiring CRAs, which they anticipate boosted to over 20 million within the next 5 years. So that's what they're appropriating annually. Orange County is doing a dedicated affordable housing trust fund of 160 million. So that's annual appropriations that are basically scaling up from 10 million to 16 million. Hillsborough County has the HOPE program, 10 million annually. That's an affordable housing trust fund. And Pinellas County is doing 80 million over the next 10 years. So all of our peer counties, large counties in Florida, have made the decision to do either a bond issue or some type of housing trust fund with a steadily increasing annual appropriation as well. You asked about land use regulations. So one of the key factors there is going to be density. So where does that density occur? That density occurs in downtown areas, which often are looking to achieve critical mass to support businesses in those areas. It'll be along commercial corridors, and it'll be along transportation hubs. I think Commissioner Weiss talked about neighborhood revitalization. Palm Beach County is land constrained. So in an odd respect, we don't really have the luxury of having large area of underutilized urban locations. So we really need to start dedicating more funds for resources and infrastructure for schools, safety and infrastructure, some of these neighborhoods, so they're more desirable places to live. The other thing that we can do from a density standpoint is encourage the use in certain neighborhoods of accessory dwelling units. I mean, that's something that's worked very well in California, in Los Angeles. Doesn't disrupt the character of the neighborhoods, but provides an affordable option. One other thing to note on the fee waivers is the impact fee assistance program was originally a workaround. There was an opinion from a county attorney that said You can't do impact fee waivers, so you have to do credits. So the dedication of the interest to pay the impact fees was a workaround to achieve that. We have a twofold, or two things have evolved since then. One, interest rates have plummeted. So obviously the interest earnings are scheduled to go down since the arrival of the pandemic. But the other thing is the legislature in 2019 specifically authorized impact fee waivers for affordable and workforce housing. So the county has the power now to do impact fee waivers for affordable workforce housing if it chooses.
Okay. And this next question is also for you, Jack, kind of similar to the last one. Are there changes in building regulations that would have a meaningful impact on the cost of construction of affordable and workforce housing, both in Palm Beach County and its municipalities?
So the short answer to that is not really. You can't compromise on quality. You can't eliminate impact glass or other things that are important to building in South Florida and being able to have sturdy structures. One thing that can be done is changing the land use designation of non-residential properties, such as these aging retail shopping centers, so that the land use is already in place. What that means is when the time comes to redevelop some of these sites, you don't have to go through a long land use process. The land use designation is already in place. It's just the zoning and a site plan approval, which is a shorter process.
Okay, thank you for that. The next question is for Representative Silvers, and you may have sort of answered this already, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How can counties and cities sustain the staff and development infrastructure necessary for the production of affordable workforce housing if they don't know approximately how many dollars they will receive from the state and local government housing trust funds each year?
So you're saying I may have already answered that question?
No, I think it kind of answers itself, because I think your answer would be, if we fully fund Sadowski, then we'll know.
Yeah, we would know. I mean, year in, year out, we would know, but I mean, we don't know, unfortunately. So
Right.
if we fully fund it. Yeah.
So I'm assuming the answer to the question your answer would be full funding would solve that problem.
Yeah, of course, because you know
Okay.
what you're having year in and year out. Right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Is that correct?
All right, so my next question is for Commissioner Weiss. And Commissioner, going back to the funding source, given the fact that the gap between the cost to deliver a unit of affordable workforce housing and the income required to afford that unit is much greater for single-family housing than for multifamily housing, so should the county's priority be to provide single-family housing or multifamily housing, and why?
Well, I mean, that's simple to answer. I mean, it's definitely multifamily. If what we're trying to do is create housing and create homes that people can afford, then multifamily is definitely the answer, because we get much bigger bang for our buck. We need less land to develop these units. So, you know, and then on the other hand, though, going back, we can, you know, as mentioned earlier, is on the single family side, is fixing up that stock of existing homes in some of our challenged neighborhoods. And it was, as mentioned too, as Jack mentioned, about, you know, it's not just doing the house, we need to work on the schools and, you know, the rest of the community infrastructure if we want people to live or to want a desire to live in some of these communities. I mean, so, but, you know, in terms of the basic question is, yeah, we should be focusing on multifamily rental units if we want to.
Okay, thank you for that. The next question is for the group. And the question is, how does racial equity relate to the current state of sustainable housing? I'll go in reverse order this time. I'll ask Jack to go first.
Well, as Dr. Murray pointed out, we have both a housing issue and an income issue, given that a majority of the jobs in the county are service and lower wage jobs. So in terms of how you respond to this from a racial equity standpoint, it's really a twofold response. One is the more general, which is what we've been talking about. We need to have more units. We need to have more affordable units. We need to invest in neighborhoods. But what the data shows is that the average household wealth of Black households is 1/10 that of white households. And the leading way that households across the country beat up wealth is through home ownership. The home ownership rate is lower among Black households, and also their homes are worth less, partly because of where they're located, which many are in historically disadvantaged neighborhoods. So the more specific approach would be to promote home ownership there, and that's producing more product. It's working on financing, and it's not only the gap financing that we referenced, it's also the first mortgage financing. It's working with lenders to make sure that they're willing and able to invest in these neighborhoods. And then it's investing in the neighborhoods as well. And obviously there's an income component of it, which is outside the housing scope. But you want to give people the means to move up to any neighborhood that they want to live in and any house that they want to live in. And that's, that's training, education, and higher incomes. But I do think, and at the Economic Council, we actually have a racial equity subcommittee that focuses on this. I do think we need to look at housing, education, employment, infrastructure, all of this with a racial equity lens so that we can correct some of these historic unfairness and discrimination.
Okay, thank you. Patrick, I'm going to let you go next.
I'm going to touch on one point with, and going back to our inclusionary program, for instance, we mean what we say when we call it inclusionary, and trying to provide the housing stock across the full spectrum of the projects that are being built, not providing them in concentrations. In our most recent rewrite of our program, we have put further incentives into those projects that build their units on site. You've got a number of opportunities available to you how you meet your obligation, but we are doubling down to the greatest degree so you don't have concentrations of incomes and in just 1-2 locations. Would much rather see them across the board in all of our projects out there. So I think a commitment to trying to provide that, trying to incentivize that to the greatest degree, recognizing that it's a significant challenge, but we've got everything, we will pull every tool out of the toolbox that we can to make that happen.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you. I think, and Jack, just sort of tagging on to what Jack said, I mean, obviously we clearly have disparities in income based on race and so forth. So I think, it's incumbent on us to address that in our policies and how we do and how we create these affordable housing programs. And then in adding on to what was said earlier as well is we do have down payment assistance programs for people that want to move into for sale units and to try and address some of the wealth gap differences. But it is a challenge, and it's certainly something we are aware of, and we are trying to address. But it's a much bigger issue than simply affordable housing. It's something our nation needs to grapple with, this wealth and income disparity.
Thank you for that. Representative Silvers, what would you suggest happening at the state level?
Well, I do want to emphasize something that both Commissioner Weiss and both Jack mentioned, that we do have this income disparity, and also the fact that not only is it income disparity, but we have the inability for people to actually get mortgages. So maybe put more of an emphasis on mortgage financing, and I guess promoting homeownership, and maybe have that as a part of our education system, and have that part of, in 2019, I believe, there was a bill that passed that required some type of financial literacy. And it would be nice to see that promoted even more across the state and across the country, as a matter of fact. But I think that more people should be aware of what you have to make sure you don't get yourself into and do a debt hole that prevents you from being able to get that mortgage to achieve that American dream of buying a home.
Thank you. I've got one last question. This one is actually for Commissioner Weiss and Patrick. What should be the roles of the cities in Palm Beach County in providing affordable and workforce housing?
Well, I think it's incumbent upon the county and the cities to work together. They have some of the prime areas that could benefit most from having affordable housing because of that's where the jobs are. They're on the transit corridors. So I think, it's incumbent upon us to find programs to take and be able to work in partnership with the cities. I know, in West Palm Beach, it's possible, let's put it this way, to do 100 units to an acre. They've built these types of facilities. We don't have anything like that in unincorporated Palm Beach County. So I think there's great opportunities, and that's something that we should be focused on and working together to make sure that we take advantage of the infill and redevelopment opportunities in our cities.
Thank you. Patrick?
Jack will remember I was on the Jupiter Planning Commission, and in my time there, they brought in their inclusionary program. And the point about cities that I would make, because our cities represent well over half our population, there are a number of different ways you can get in the housing game. Find the one that works for you. For some, it would be an inclusionary program, among other things. For many other cities, that's not the best option. Find the option that works for your city, for your government, but get involved, get in the game somehow. We all need to be part of this.
Well, thank you all. You were a great panel. You kept us on schedule, which I'm shocked. And your answers were thought-provoking and honest, and it will give us, again, much food for thought going forward. So thank you all. And I'm now going to turn the program back to Mary Lou Bedford.
Great. Thank you so much, Skip, for being our moderator today. And thank you to our panelists. We so appreciate it. Commissioner David Silvers, we appreciate your time. I know what a busy man you are. And, 2 Fridays in a row, you were with us. And so we appreciate all you're doing for us on the state level. Commissioner Greg Rice, thank you so much for being part of today and also everything you're doing in the county. And Patrick Rudder, we want to thank you for stepping in last minute for County Administrator Virginia Baker, and we send our condolences out to her family. And finally, Jack Weir, our president of HLC and also the president of East Wind Development. We thank you for everything you're doing for housing out there in the county. I want to thank Dr. Ned Murray for his presentation today, for Florida Power and Light and Pam Roush for their support of today's program. Dodie, thank you so much for sharing about HLC. And Maria, thank you for starting our program out. We appreciate it. It really takes all of us on the state level, county, municipalities, and the business community to work collaboratively to continue to do what we need to do, and that is have a workforce that can live and work in Palm Beach County. So we thank you all for joining us today, and we wish you all a great weekend. Thank you so much.